Check, check. Try again. Ecclesiastes 6:1-9. There's an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that he lacks nothing of all that he desires. Yet God does not give him power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous evil. If a man fathers 100 children and lives many years, so that the days of his years are many, but his soul is not satisfied with life's good things, and he also has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered.
Let's pray. Father, life is often marked with the things that leave us empty. And even if we don't admit it, money is one of those things, if not the biggest one. We know that the truth, or at least we suspect that the truth, is that your Son is sufficient and will meet all of our needs, but it's so hard to see it. It's so hard to believe it for a number of reasons. The way we are raised, our life experience, our own financial traumas, our own dependencies. It's so hard to believe that your Son is sufficient. Help us see that this morning. In the name of your Son, amen. Morning Harvest, and once again, morning visitors, a warm welcome to you. We've been working through the book of Ecclesiastes, and Solomon is helping us examine life in totality, the things that we give our life over to, and how often they leave us feeling empty. And of course, money is one of those things. He's mentioned it before. We're going to definitely dive into it today. But as we're thinking about money, I was hanging out with Nick as he was preparing for his Friday night get-together with his students, and they were watching, I guess, the Super Mario Brothers movie. It made me think about the Super Mario Brothers television show that I watched back in the 90s. I don't know if you were like me, an 80s and 90s kid. If you lived in the area, I lived around here for about a year with my mom. And, before school, you had when I was 11 and 12, before school, I had my set of cartoons, and then I went to school and I came back and I had my other cartoons. And the lineup for me would have been Rescue Rangers, remember? DuckTales, and then Super Mario Brothers, but that show was kind of on the downward trend, so that ended up getting cut to the morning. So then later on, it was just Rescue Rangers and it was DuckTales. And my favorite show was, guess what? DuckTales. Why? Because the main character, Scrooge McDuck, based on Ebenezer Scrooge from Christmas Carol, written by Charles Dickens, Scrooge McDuck was extraordinarily wealthy. He had a vault filled with so much money that every day, we saw this in the show, every day he would go to his diving board with his swimsuit on, and he would dive into what they estimated to be $14 trillion of gold coins. And now, some of you guys know, I, for the most part, lived with my dad, who I would define as, at that time, living below the poverty line. But that year that I moved in with my mom, who I would define as middle class, there was this feeling of, I was going from this place of want to this place of fulfillment, and I found it in money. And so what I saw in DuckTales, what DuckTales told me, was that money was what? Fun. It was fun. But it also told me this, that money is freedom. Because Scrooge McDuck had these two nephews and this niece that moved in with them, and because he was extraordinarily wealthy, whatever adventure they wanted to go on, He would take them. And guys, if you remember, it's right there in the opening song. Life is like a hurricane here in Duckburg. Race cars, lasers, aeroplanes. It's a duck blur. Might solve a mystery or rewrite history. DuckTales. Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Am I up here alone in my nostalgia? Hello, darkness, my old friend. All right, so it's right there in the opening song. What? Money means freedom. I can do whatever I want. And most of us, if not all of us, who are attracted to money and wealth and accruing it, and by the way, who isn't? That's what we believed about money early on. The good news is there was another narrative out there. You see, yes, of course, I watched DuckTales, like I guess a few of you, when you were 12 or 13. But I also read The Hobbit. And if you remember in The Hobbit, there is Smaug the dragon. And Smaug the dragon was greedy, and he was a hoarder. And what he would do is he would fly across Middle-earth looking for treasure. And when he found treasure, he would kill the owners of the treasure, as he did with the dwarves in Erebor, and he would lay on top of it. He had so much greed, it would literally pour out of his skin onto the gold. So the gold was filled with dragon's greed. They also called it dragon sickness. So there's one of the dwarves went in there, grabbed some of this gold for their own because they believed it belonged to them, grabbed this gold for their own, but it was filled with dragon sickness, and the gold drove them mad. And it's supposed to be symbolic about the pursuit of wealth and money, and how, though we think it belongs to us, when we possess it and pursue it, it drives us mad. And we get what Tolkien calls dragon sickness. And I suspect that is, when we talk about money and the life experience we've had, that's been your arc. You started off pursuing money because it promised you freedom and it promised you fun, but now you have found that it comes with a disease. That if you sat down and you interviewed your character would say, I don't feel well. I don't feel well. Your character would say something like, I used to not be judgmental. I mean, look, man, everyone around me is a friend and I'll hang out with anyone. But then you began to sort people out between the haves and the have-nots. You began to judge people based upon where they shopped, right? There's American Outfitters and there's Kohl's. I think y'all figured out, I don't shop at American Outfitters. I probably shop at Kohl's. And y'all like, yeah, we knew that, Pastor Kevin. We know where you shop, right? You used to help people out no matter what the need was, but then you recognize after a while, I better save my money and my resources to help people out who can help me. It's a disease. It's money sickness. And your character is saying, I don't feel well because money has begun to warp my very priorities of life. In fact, I will do whatever God tells me to do if it doesn't affect my bank account. It literally gets in the way of you and God. So Solomon is going to explore today money sickness, what it does to us, how it warps and how it twists us. But then on the other side of his examination of money sickness, he's going to give us a couple of solutions. One, understanding what is ours and accepting what has been given to us. But then he's going to also point to the very reason that we are taken by money, and that is the thing that we need to fully examine. So before we get to the solutions, let's just address some of these money sicknesses that Solomon talks about. And what I'm going to ask you to do, because he lists 6 different types of money sicknesses, I'm going to ask you to identify which one do you have, because guys, we have something. I would argue there's just about no one on this planet who's not affected by the desire and the pursuit of money. We all have it in some way. I'm going to ask you to decide which one that you have. You might have one or two or three. I know I do. So let's deal with the first one. Money sickness. Number one, money addiction. Chapter 5, verse 10, it says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity." Generally, money leaves us with this desire for more. I don't care how big your paycheck is, right? I don't care how big of a scholarship you got. Just about all of us, when we look down at that paycheck or we look down at that scholarship, none of us say, "Hey, that's enough. I wouldn't want more of this." Money has this thing about pulling us in and desiring more of it. But some of us, it's truly an addiction, like any other kind of addiction. There's an article written by Lauren Lister in the Daily Ticker, and it's about Sam Polk, a 30-year-old, incredibly successful investor. He quit Wall Street cold turkey. Up to that point, for 8 years, he had made so much money, he accrued $8 million in bonuses. He was what we would define as independently wealthy. But the reason that he quit was because no matter how much he had in his bank account, no matter how big his bonuses were, he was envious of those who had more. And say when you're a millionaire, you're an investor, you find yourself around billionaires. And that's what he says. I found myself around these billionaires. And while I would get a $3.4 million bonus, which anyone on the planet should be happy with, I was angry that it was just $3.4 million, while my billionaire friends could literally buy a small island or buy their way into the presidency. And I took a long look in the mirror and I realized that my greed and my addiction to money had so warped reality that a $3.4 million check was not good enough. I think for a lot of us, when it comes to money, that's what we struggle with. It's not good enough. I could have more. It could give me more freedom and more power. The second money sickness is what I would call needy money. When goods increase, they increase who eat them. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Which is to say, the more money we have, the greater our needs, which is weird. See, money uncovers needs more than it meets it. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed that? So you make a paycheck, you get a scholarship, or someone invests in your company, or whatever the thing is, and you get this bulk of cash, and the entire motivation for that was because at one point in your life, you said, "I need more money to meet my needs." But now that you've gotten an infusion of cash, you realize, oh, it's not enough. I have greater needs, I have greater needs, I have greater needs. Money has this way of exposing all these needs that we didn't even know that we had. Dr. Hanna, a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, was someone I really respected. He was our history prof, and he tells this story that when he started his professorship at DTS, and I think it was like back in the 60s, the paycheck wasn't big, that basically he and his family were broke, okay? They just had a little baby, and they literally could not afford a crib. So they did what some of us have heard before. They pulled open their dresser drawer and put their baby in the dresser drawer, and that was their crib. And your grandmother probably told you about that. You might have done that, depending on your financial situation. And he said, yeah, we would take our precious child and put him in this dresser drawer because we could not afford a crib. And he said this, I remember when he said this in class, we were having the time of our life. We couldn't have been happier. We had nothing, and we couldn't have been happier. Fast forward to today. Some of you all just brought a baby into this world. And you're trying to decide what kind of crib you're going to buy. It's going to be pine or an acacia. And you guys are yelling at each other. And you're saying, I don't know, you decide. And someone runs out of the room crying and screaming because you can't decide if it's acacia or pine. Why are you persecuting me? This is not a personal story. I'm just saying in general. You get so wound up because you think, well, not only do we need a crib made of a specific type of wood. That's the need that we have. And so money just keeps uncovering all of these needs that you never knew that you had, which is a kind of money sickness. Money sickness number 3, money moat. And what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? In other words, what he's saying is there are these kinds of hoarders where they take all the money and they cut everyone out and they built this moat. You guys know a moat is basically a band of water around a castle, and it's to keep people out. But they have accrued so much money and kept everyone out, they become this kind of moat. They do not want to share. Money sickness number 4. Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much. But the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep. We call that money insomnia. Simply put, the day laborer, and when Solomon or anyone in the Bible talks about labor, they're talking about day laborers. The day laborer has nothing. He owns nothing. So he sleeps like a baby because he's not worried about any of his possessions being taken at night. But the rich man who has all of these things can't sleep. And see, and this often happens to us. We buy our house, we buy our cars, we build our investment accounts, all of these things. And then after a while, the larger and the more valuable the material possessions we have, the more we begin to say, who's going to try to take this away from me? So you hire security and guards and protection and insurance and warranties and all these things because you're afraid somewhere in the dead of night, someone's going to take everything away from you. And so the veterans here at Harvest Community Church, I suspect, because I worked in church plants before, I suspect that in those first 28 years of Harvest, as we were a church in a box, that while the possessions that you had were valuable, you were not as worried about their well-being and their upkeep as you are about the building today. Why? Because it's new and it's nice and it's pretty and we've worked 30 years to get here. There was a shift. I bet you experienced this kind of shift going from the church in the box where you just kind of threw things into boxes and crates and put it into a storage shed. But now we are in this beautiful place. But with this beautiful place comes what? More anxieties. And I bet you more insurances, more warranties, more anxieties. Money sickness number 5, money poisoning. There's a grievous evil that I have seen under the sun. Riches were kept by their owner to his hurt, which is a way to say that there are some folks, maybe you're one of them, but what they do is they hoard and hold on to stuff. And even in moments of sickness, and maybe there's family needs, whatever it is, we don't want to spend the money because the money has become our identity. And if we give $1 away to make sure our family and friends and maybe the person on the street corner is taken care of, that might hurt us. It begins to poison us. Money sickness number 6, stock market misery. And those riches were lost in a bad venture. And he is father of a son, but he has nothing in his hand. Your emotional well-being is fixed to the Dow Jones Industrial Average. When it's up, you're up. When it's down, you're down. So what do we do with this? What do we do with these kind of money sicknesses that I just marched in front of us? Maybe you identify with one or two or three or whatever. What do we do with that? Allow me one more fantastic image. So C.S. Lewis also talks about greed and dragons. And it's not a surprise. C.S. Lewis was friends with Tolkien. They often swapped notes. But in C.S. Lewis's story, in Voyage of the Dawn Treader, there's this boy named Eustace. And he was, as you can imagine, the story starts off, he was kind of a brat. He was a jerk. No one liked him. And he, with his friends, they stumble upon some treasure, and there's this ring, and this greed kind of boils up in him, and he goes and he grabs that ring. He shouldn't grab that ring, but he does, and he puts it on, and he begins to notice over time that he's changing. He's no longer a boy. He becomes this ugly, scaly dragon. And what C.S. Lewis is trying to say through that image of this ugly, scaly dragon is that we, in this moment of vulnerability, we reach, promoted out of greed, we reach for money to cover us and take care of us because we think it can protect us. But as Jared Garing says, you see, when greed takes hold of your heart, you become ruthless, unstable, and insecure. You think being a dragon makes you strong, when in reality, the scales are a facade. Beneath the tough exterior, you're a scared child, horrified at what he's become. In other words, what happens is we reach for money to protect us, but we don't realize what it turns us into. It makes us ugly. What do we do about it? Well, if you're familiar with Narnia and C.S. Lewis, this is when Aslan shows up. Aslan is a type of Jesus. So Aslan approaches Eustace. Eustace says, "Help me. Look at what I have become." Aslan says, "I can help you, but it's going to hurt." So in the story, what Aslan does is, with those great lion claws, is he begins to rip at the skin of the Eustace dragon, peeling it back. And of course, it hurts. What do we do with money sickness? First thing you should know as we consider the Aslan imagery is, honestly, there is nothing that you can do. You have to let Jesus, you have to receive what Jesus is doing to you. What I mean is, you need to receive Jesus' good work on your life. And I've actually seen this happen to a number of my friends, and guys, it's happened to me more than once. Where my friends who have pursued money to the extent that it has so overwhelmed them and it's turned them ugly, and I have seen Jesus rip that terrible exterior from their life, and he does it in the ways that you and I probably think he does. For some, he takes away the money. And I know that's, out of this entire sermon, that's not what you wanted to hear. Is there a way you could preach this sermon, Pastor Kevin, without losing my money? Unfortunately, for some, Jesus will take away the money. At that moment, what I want you to know, it very well could be Jesus. Let him do it. Let him do it. But you'll be surprised. There are other times he doesn't touch your money. A relief, I know. He doesn't touch your money. But he will remove significant relationships. He might remove certain job positions. He might remove your very strength, because then you have this moment where you realize, you know what? This stuff was making me look bad, literally. Look at who I've become. What I want you guys to know is, when it's happening, Jesus is doing the hard but good work. Let him do it. Don't hold on. I have held on. I know I'm holding on to other areas of my life right now. Don't hold on, because the sooner the ugliness of riches and the pursuit of wealth come off, the better you'll be. So then he goes on, and this is a lot, this is Solomon. Solomon kind of just gives us his beat down in the beginning of this section, but then he relieves us with some answers. And for you and I, that's why we go to the word, because we are looking for actual answers. So we come to verse 16, and it says here, "This also is a grievous evil, just as he came, so shall he go. And what gain is there to him who toils for the wind? Moreover, all his days he eats in darkness and much vexation and sickness and anger." As a way to say that there is a lot of us who so pursue wealth, our very dream is to be independently wealthy. And we get it. But guess what happens when you're independently wealthy? You're also extremely lonely. You're so independent, there's no one in the room with you. And he's saying, this is not the way you want to go. How do you reverse what we have identified as money sickness? Let's go to verse 18. "Behold, what I have seen to be good and fitting," we've heard this a lot in Ecclesiastes. It feels like this is Solomon's point, "is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun the few days of his life that God has given him. For this is his," focus on this word, "lot." Right? This is his portion. We know that this is an important word for Solomon because he brings it up again. So let's keep going. Verse 19. "Everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and power to enjoy them." Really quickly, it is easy, especially when you're in an evangelical church. The takeaway is God doesn't want us to have any money or possessions or wealth. That is absolutely false. Some God gives some possessions to, some God gives other possessions to. There is not necessarily anything wrong with wealth and possessions, but listen to this. "And to accept his lot and rejoice in his toil. This is the gift of God." So, for some of us, God gives us a small lot. For some of us, God gives us a medium lot. For some of us, God gives us a large lot. Whether it's money, or if it's intelligence, or if it's talent. And he's saying the secret to this money sickness that you and I struggle with is to accept what's been given to you. And I suspect if you're like me, as a good American, you hate that word, lot. All right, think about the synonyms for the word lot. Assigned, allowance, designated, apportioned, granted. That is not the American dream. What's the American dream in terms of money? Freedom, financial freedom. I don't want any borders to how much money I can make in this world. I want the world to be my financial oyster. I want to get everything that I can before I leave this planet. And what he is saying is, but actually, when you get to the place where you are happy with the thing that's been given to you, that's the secret to this money sickness that a lot of us struggle with. Ruth and Billy Graham one time went to go visit a wealthy man in the Caribbean, small island. He was 75 years old, very rich, very wealthy. And throughout the entire meal, he seemed close to tears. He said, "I am the most miserable man in the world. Out there is my yacht. I can go anywhere I want to. I have my private plane, my helicopters. I have everything. I want to make my life happy, yet I am miserable." And so they did their best to share the gospel. To say, guess what? You can be satisfied in something greater than your yacht and your plane and your house in the Caribbean. And later, Ruth and Billy Graham, they went to their small cottage down the hill, and this local Baptist pastor came over, and he was a widower. Didn't have a lot. And he started to tell his own story. And his story is basically that he was spending most of his time there on the island taking care of 2 invalid sisters. And he declared, I am the happiest man on this island. And Ruth and Billy Graham reflected on that moment. And what did they say? They said, guess who the richest person was on the island? The man who was happy with what was in his hands, whatever it might be, small or great, to be satisfied. So the last point that Solomon makes here comes down to our appetite. It's in chapter 6, verse 7. We're going to skip a couple of verses. He writes, all man's efforts are for his mouth. We all have an appetite. We're all hungry. We're all trying to put something in it. Whether it's our literal mouth, or it's our bank accounts, or it's our houses, or it's our garages packed to the gill, we're all trying to get and get and get. Yet his appetite is never satisfied. What advantage has a wise man over a fool? What does a poor man gain by knowing how to conduct himself before others? Better what the eye sees, in other words, better to be happy with the thing that's in front of you than the roving of the appetite. You leave your place, your house, maybe your family, maybe even your country, because you're so hungry for wealth and riches that it is carrying you all over the planet, but you are never satisfied. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Most of you know that when it comes to a healthy diet, healthy, I want to put the asterisk on healthy. When it comes to a healthy diet, the primary job is the control of your appetite. It is to learn what to be satisfied in. Not to be satisfied in Krispy Kremes or mochi donuts or boba with every meal, right? But is be satisfied with a good balance of carbohydrates and proteins and blah, 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 right? It's about the control of your appetite. What is so beautiful about our faith disciple is that Jesus is sufficient. He really is. A thing hard for me to grasp and understand, but a thing that I truly know. And if you're trying to look for a counter agent for the money sickness that has overtaken you, like it's overtaken me, like it's probably overtaken everyone in Orange County and across the globe, you must come to the conclusion that Jesus is sufficient. And we must do the work of adjusting our appetite in Him. And not in these things that lead to pain and destruction and isolation. We must find our joy in Him. At this time, I would like to invite the worship team forward. Father, even this week, I know I pursued many other things than your Son. That I grasped for things that I knew wouldn't truly make me feel satisfied. And at the center is money and fame and fortune. And Father, I confess today that I'm going to struggle with it again tomorrow. that I'm going to check the Dow Jones and text my money guy and ask him, how's the market doing? Because I'm just so sure that it's my wealth that will bring me comfort. But it will not. Father, make Jesus big in our lives this week. May he eclipse everything else. May we see that he is the thing we should truly want and seek. And that whatever he puts in our hands, small or great, to be satisfied with. In the name of your Son, amen.
Just stand with us as we close our worship. Goodness is running after me.
Your goodness is running after me. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after that again. Your goodness is
For some of you during this season, especially here in the U.S., your heart might be broken by the economic downturn. You're scared. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's next. For some of you, just your finances are in a wreck, or they've been significantly challenged. A disease has shown itself. You've gotten a diagnosis, and you're just not sure what's going to happen with your bank account, with your family. Maybe you lost a job. And the beautiful thing about Harvest and any church is that we are here for you. We would love to talk with you. We would love to intercede in prayer for you. We would love to just be a listening ear as you're dealing with all of that. And maybe it's not money, maybe it's not finances, maybe it's something else. Whatever it might be. Specifically, the elders are here for you. This is our primary job, is to intercede and pray for you. So this time, I'd like to invite the elders forward. And if you would like a listening ear, if you'd like for someone to intercede, I would encourage you guys to come forward and to talk with one of them. If you need a little more privacy, we do have a prayer room that our elders would love to step in there and talk with and counsel you. I'll be out in the lobby connecting with folks, and you can pull me aside. You can also reach out to us here on the screen. You can email me at kevinm@harvestirvine.org or elderpray@hcirvine.org. There's so many ways to connect with us. Prayer circle, we've got the cards in the front. We would love to connect with you. We would love to pray over you. Let us be there for you with whatever you're going through right now. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Now let us all go and be a blessing. I'll be there.
How you doing? I'm Dan's brother, Dan and Ron Chow.
Oh, yeah, very good. Yeah, he's our money guy. He makes sure everything's sorted out.
That's why his hair's so red.
That's right. Thank you. Yeah, that's right, man. Can you help me move this table over?
I don't have money. I have insomnia.
What do you do about that?
Of the goodness